So in 7 days' time, I'm going to be lining up to run my 10th marathon ever at the London Marathon 2025, and I'm feeling very anxious. Now, you might be thinking, you've done this 9 times, what's so different about your 10th? Well, I couldn't really pinpoint it either. I was literally having panic attacks in the middle of my session runs, and I literally had to pause my watch because I had a panic cry in this very park. It wasn't until I spoke to a sports psychologist that I really was able to talk about my feelings, talk about the anxiety, and talk about just everything that I was feeling ahead of London Marathon. And in today's video, I actually want to share about some of the things that I learned from this sports psychology appointment because I felt completely in the dark about feeling all of this anxiety and all of these feelings. And I feel like I learned 3 really key things that would be super helpful for runners that are feeling anxious before their next marathon. So I did bring along my journal with me to the park so that I could talk you through all of these things. I made notes throughout my call yesterday with the sports psychologist, and as you can see, we've made some pretty good notes, some drawings, a lot of big lettering, small lettering, and I want to talk you through everything that I think is really going to help me feel my most confident and just believe in myself a little bit more come race day. So firstly, what my sports psychologist spoke to me about was being able to distinguish between unhelpful and helpful thoughts. So when these thoughts come to you during your session, during your marathon race day, I think that it's hard to sometimes act in the moment because we obviously don't have very much time, but being able to distinguish and choose whether these thoughts are actually helpful or unhelpful by really thinking through either the context or the content of that thought and thinking, will this actually help me in this very moment in time? Or is this actually not going to help me? And is this gonna make me feel a lot worse about myself? I know that that's easier said than done. I think it's also really helpful to think about this in relation to, is this going to be helpful towards visualizing that athlete and who you know you can be and building the confidence and courage towards becoming that athlete and running your best race come race day. The second thing that my sports psychologist talked to me about was, instead of thinking what if, think what is. I think sometimes with anxiety, it's really easy to feel very anxious in the moment and feel very in your head versus feeling present and kind of like acknowledging where you are. A sports psychologist had worked with a number of football players, for example, and how she helped them be more present in the moment was to ask them to, for example, feel the badge on their jersey to help them feel more present and sort of bring them back down to earth. This sports psychologist as well used to be an 800-meter sprinter, and so she used to, when fighting those thoughts in her head, used to touch her fingers together just like this, just to help remind her that she was in control in that very moment. And so I think it's gonna be really helpful to kind of help me bring myself back down to earth and get me out of my head when I'm starting to spiral a bit maybe during the marathon or have any negative thoughts or anything that causes me to think that I cannot go on any further. And I think it's gonna be really helpful to remind myself of being present and being in the moment of London Marathon because it truly is such an incredible day out. The crowds are incredible and it's always just such an incredible opportunity to be able to run such an amazing race that comes once a year every April. I am going to include a couple of extra tips after I give tip number 3, but tip number 3 is kind of a visual, so I'm going to try my best to show that on screen. So there are 2 arrows essentially pointing opposite directions from me. And so in this visualization, you have 2 arrows that are sort of going away from you, and me as the decision maker making that decision in the moment have to decide whether I'm going to hook myself into these negative thoughts or if I'm going to unhook myself away from these negative thoughts so that I can actually take actions towards being the athlete that I want to be. So in terms of thinking of this arrow in this direction around things that might hook you into these negative thoughts, it might be any moments of self-doubt or things that are making you feel like maybe you can't do what you went out to accomplish to do. So whether you went and you hit a mile, whether it's like mile 3 or mile 14 and it wasn't a goal-paced mile, sometimes those can sort of creep into your head and make you feel like, oh, maybe I'm not capable of accomplishing my goal and maybe I'm not going to hit my goal at all. But that thought doesn't help you in the moment, and instead it's more helpful to unhook yourself and think, okay, I'm gonna unhook myself from this negative thought and I'm actually gonna take actions in terms of speaking positively to myself, repeating my mantras to myself, and just telling myself to keep putting one foot in front of the other to make sure that I keep going rather than feeling like I'm gonna give up in that moment. I think that this is also a really helpful way to sort of distinguish between those thoughts. And these thoughts can be really impactful in terms of helping you take those actions towards being the athlete that you want to be, that you know that you can be, that your training has set you out to be come race day. Sometimes with anxiety, it's really easy to feel like you are completely out of control of your feelings, of your body, and sometimes that's how I feel when I'm having a panic attack. Something that my sports psychologist spoke to me about was that when you instill courage in yourself and you believe in yourself and you feel strong and powerful and you have those strong self-beliefs, those can help you take back control of what might be an anxious mind. And I think that when you think of things like mantras and how you speak to yourself and how you see yourself, I think that these are all things that can be really helpful in helping you feel your strongest and most courageous, but also take that control back from an anxious mind. The next tip that my sports psychologist gave me was to visualize a time or a race when you had either a really good session or just a really good race day experience. Now, the example that I gave her was Cambridge Half, and she asked me what elements of that race day made it so good. And so I told her that it was great because I felt really strong and I felt really confident in myself, that I trusted the pacing of the pace that I was going at, even though I started a little bit too quick. But I really, really trusted myself throughout that whole race, and it led to me feeling confident and feeling strong and smiling ear to ear throughout that entire race up until the end where things got hard. But even then, I was able to find some friends and finish with them. And so I think that, in conjunction with reminding yourself of the block that you've had and thinking of really strong sessions where you executed a really good session, say for example, my 12 miles of marathon pace was a really solid confidence boost where I was able to actually prove to myself that I could run marathon pace for 12 miles straight without any breaks. And so visualization can be a really great way to help you think about how you're going to have the best race day possible. And finally, for my final tip, mantras are so powerful and something that my sports psychologist talked about as well, but she was very pleased to hear that I did a couple myself already. But one that she gave me was, if not for you, then who? And this was reference to when I was talking about my grandpa and how he died a few years ago and how he used to be a distance runner. And so she was reminding me that when times get hard, if not for you, then who? And just thinking it in that way can be really helpful to sort of reframe the tough moment that you're in. My next favorite mantra is one that I saw recently on TikTok from a creator named Christina who ran an incredible marathon recently, and something that she said that she was saying to herself in the final moments of the marathon when it got really hard was, why not you? And I wrote that in big letters in my journal because I think that's been one of my favorite words and sayings, and I think that that can be so powerful, and I think it'll be definitely one that I likely write on my hand or my arm come race day because it's so true. Why not you? Why can't it be you who runs the marathon? Why can't it be you who runs the Boston qualifier? And so I'm really going to use that one for sure, and I just really love that one. Finally, I'll finish on some mantras that I've actually picked up from not only Christina, the creator that I mentioned before, but Philly Bowden also, because she also always has such great mantras. So the first one is, we do this because we're lucky enough to be able to. The second one is a classic, you can do hard things. The third one is, if you're scared to do it, that's exactly when you should do it. And the last one is, you experience breakthrough by getting through what didn't break you. And I just think these are all, even though they're really cheesy and maybe too deep, I think that they are going to be the mantras that I'm going to list out to myself in my journal the night before and just remind myself that I'm capable of doing hard things, that I'm strong. And yeah, I'm going to plaster why not you across my hand, maybe even across my forehead. But I think that it's just such a good way to get yourself into a positive headspace. But that just about wraps up today's video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that this sort of helped anyone who's feeling anxious before their marathon or race, whatever distance it is. I think it's super normal to feel anxious, and like many people will tell you, if you feel anxious, it means that you care. And sometimes if you feel a little more anxious than normal, like I did, it can be great to speak to a sports psychologist. So I'll link the one that I spoke to in the details of the YouTube video, and I know that there are so many resources online, so I will try and find some. I'll try and link them in the description box below. But if you like this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and comment below what sort of videos you'd like to see from me next. I know that next weekend is the London Marathon, so we don't really have much time, but obviously I'll keep making videos after the London Marathon. But there will be so many videos that come out from next weekend, not just race day and how everything goes, but I'm also going to be taking you along for the New Balance weekend experience, going to be working with Strava for some cool bits. So lots of stuff, and probably just going to vlog the whole weekend. I'm really looking forward to it. So I will see you next weekend in next week's vlog, but I hope that you're having a great day when you're watching this, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.